Okay. Hello, my name is Rutendo Catherine Guri. I am one of the service co-directors of Create Zim. And today on our Zoom discussion, we are discussing gender-based violence towards women and sexual assault and how these things affect our mental health as women. I have with me a group of young adults and phenomenal women. And we have with us a psychologist, Mrs. Mapuke, who will introduce herself now.
Thank you so much, Lucendo. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Fatima Mapuke. I'm a community psychologist.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mapuke. Yasha, do you want to go ahead?
I'm Yasha, and I'm the co-founder of Create Zim.
Yes, sir.
Hi. Hi, I'm Maruva. I'm 21. I'm a student, and I volunteer with Create Zim.
Thank you. Nesu?
Hi guys, my name is Anesu. I'm 21 as well, I think. Yes. I'm a student, and also I'm just here to volunteer and to kind of talk on the topic.
Great, thank you. Mati?
My name is Mati. I'm 21 and
all right. Okay. Thank you, guys. So we're just going to do 30 seconds of silence because this is a heavy topic for us as women. So we're dedicating 30 seconds of silence for the victims of gender-based violence towards women and sexual assault. Starting now. All right, thank you. Okay. Right, so I'm sure in those 30 seconds, just thinking about the topic and how heavy it is, I don't know if it was just me, but I felt a bit of emotion. So the question I have for you guys is, what is the first word that comes to mind when I say the topic gender-based violence and sexual assault? Anyone can speak.
I think for me, I don't mean to talk, but I think of death. I think just because there's been so many cases of what on social media, and it's already a dark topic, but that ends with me. The first word that comes to my mind.
Okay, thank you.
The first word that comes to my mind is pain, because this is horrible, guys. And gender-based violence, sexual assault, it stays with you. And we're kind of at a point now, especially on social media and stuff, with all the conversations being had, that people that don't even realize they've been assaulted or been victims of things, are starting to be aware, and it changes your mind of. And so many people, you also hear all these stories of people that have blocked it out. And, more awareness also means a lot more people have to confront the issue that they've maybe never dealt with or kind of brushed off aside. Because when you're a victim of these things, society expects you to move on. And that's painful because your life's changed through an experience, but society doesn't care. And you have to hold on to this like very serious pain, and it hurts, but you have to continue because life isn't going to stop for you.
And Yasha, is there anything you relate to from what Anesu or Mati have said?
Oh yeah, definitely. The social medias, is always, bombarding us with terrible, terrible news. And when I hear of gender-based violence, when I see these stories, I think, am I next? Am I going to be a victim? It really attacks my person, really.
Okay. Marula?
Funny enough, it's not a word for me. I think it's a phrase. It's shingirira mwanangu, or just shingirira. That's what comes to my mind. I hear just a lot of the way that even in our culture as Shona people have been raised to just have to endure it. It's like just, that's kind of what comes with, being a woman in this world. Just chungo shingirira, so shingirira is to like hold on, endure it.
Yeah.
So that's what came to my mind.
And Mrs. Mapuke?
For me, it's it's a lot of things. It's all the women that I've had to work with who have going through gender-based violence. It's even the families that I've had to work with because of gender violence. It's the children that I've seen suffering due to gender-based violence. So for me, it creates all these different kind of emotions. Sometimes I actually, it's anger. Sometimes it's, just feeling so sad that people have had to go through what they have had to go through. And sadly for me, it's even, I know today we are talking about gender-based violence in as far as women, which is why sometimes I want to call it violence against women. Because the outcry normally when you say gender-based violence is that even men are also sometimes they are receivers of this, and it's also true. So when you just say gender-based violence, I think even of men, we have had to go through it. But because today we are talking about women, not saying that men are not going through it, but just appreciating that our discussion today is more to do with women. We have had to go with gender-based violence. I'll be using the term violence against women to just make sure that someone will not come and say you're not giving justice to the topic. So when I think about violence against women, I think about all those things. I think about children. We had to grow up without a mother because sometimes she had to take the issues into her hands, and she ended up doing things that she didn't want to do, and she ended up in jail. There are so many things that happen. There are so many outcomes, and that's really sad.
All right. Thank you for that, Ms. Mapuke. So yes, I think she raised a very good point that we're not dismissing that men also go through gender-based violence, but for the purpose of this discussion, we are focusing on violence against women. With that having been said, a few weeks ago, there was a lot of posts on social media about the violence against women in South Africa, and it was terrible. It was a terrible sight. So we have with us Anesu, who actually lives in South Africa. And I wanted to ask you, Anesu, as a woman and as a Zimbabwean, how have you felt living in South Africa when all of this is happening around you?
Okay. It's really painful. I'm not even gonna lie, and I think I'm using the word painful a lot, but it's the only way to really explain it. Last year, when Uyinene, and it became a global phenomenon when Uyinene passed away and when she went missing. She actually comes from the town that I live in, and she went to a local school, and her family are associated with the school that I go to, and it was really heavy. There were all these people that knew her personally, and it's not like I knew her personally. I'd never had the opportunity to meet her, but it felt so personal. We had a virgil for her, and and there was this really heavy, when she was missing, there was this really heavy hope that I hope she's okay, and I hope she's okay. And there were all these like little stories that kept popping up of the worst case scenarios and people claiming things and stuff. And then the story broke, that she passed away, and it gutted me. I remember I stopped going to school for a little bit. I just stopped and I froze because it hurt. And the reality is, it could be me, could be my friend, could be my cousin, because that's exactly what happens in South Africa. At the moment, you don't go a day without there being a new missing poster, unfortunately. Walking in town trying to get things with my friends, you have people catcalling you. I've had people grab at me, you know. I remember one very terrifying experience I had was I was walking, and these two men, they were smartly dressed, they were waiting near the court area. I guess they worked there, and they just jumped at me, you know, out of the blue. And then they started laughing because they simply did it to see my reaction. And I had to laugh back to make sure I was safe. I had to get the joke to make sure I could leave, you know. And these people pretending to attack me because it was funny for them. And that's the reality, you know, of South Africa is men are entitled to women's bodies in that manner. They don't have to know you. They don't care who you are. They don't, you know, if someone greets you, you're scared to not greet back because you don't know how they'll react to you. Those statistics are very real and they're very scary and they're very painful. And you never know if you're going to go home. I literally walking at night is a myth. You can't do it. You can't go places alone. I guess you can, but I personally don't even feel safe enough to do that because people are disappearing in broad daylight. What more? I'm very small size. I'm very small build. Someone can literally pick me up and go, and no one's gonna think twice about it, and it terrifies me.
Thank you for that, Nyesu. And Nyasha and Mati, I know you guys were both in Zimbabwe. The whole catcalling issue, you know, I just want to know, like, how does it make you guys feel? Like, do you guys feel it's as bad as South Africa, or is it getting there? Is it bitter, or yeah?
Um,
Uh,
sorry. I can't, I don't personally think it's as bad as South Africa, but I feel like we could actually go in that direction. No, just like going on a car that slow down and then, you know, cat calling you. They're about to stop the car, someone about to take. Going in town, you know, when they say boutique, women should dress a certain way because and it's like innate, really like innate type of scary to think how we start with us.
Thank you. Nyasha?
Yes, I would second that. Like the whole in town, you know, they say women should dress a certain way and men will come and they'll cover you and everything. I've personally seen that. I don't know if it's as bad as it is in South Africa, but in my personal experience, I have seen men harassing girls. And if I'm walking with a guy, you know, the guy will say, no, stop, don't do that. Even walking in a shopping center, I'm carrying my groceries, there'll be a guy, you know, in a car, he rolls down his window and, you know, calls me out of my name, and calls me, you know, a affectionate name like babe or whatever. And like what Nancy was saying, like you have to like smile or like laugh it off and sort of like play with the person and say it's like a joke because you just don't know how they're going to react. They could react violently. In some cases, some have, but I've been quick enough to just like move and so forth. But I'm always thinking like when someone catcalls me, how is this person going to react? It's almost like a PTSD thing that I sometimes experience, and I see a lot of girls experiencing that area as well.
Mm. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned PTSD, so I'm going to go to Ms. Mapuk and ask her. You said you talk to a lot of women who have faced violence against women and sexual assault. With things like this, like PTSD, simply things like being catcalled and men harassing us in public, how would you say that affects our mental health as women from a professional point
Okay,
of
so
view?
okay, so from a psychological point of view, we are seeing that from what these ladies were telling us, you can actually see that there's a certain level of anxiety before we even go to PTSD. Someone is actually anxious before she goes out of her place. She's not sure, am I safe? So we are seeing a lot of anxiety right there to say, should I even go out? Am I safe out there? Or even if I do go out, am I dressed right? So someone now has to stop and really plan a day out as if it's something that is out of this world. Whilst men can actually just grab whatever he grabs, put on whatever he puts on, and goes out there and just be himself and enjoy the day. But for us as women, it means that now I have to really stop and think, where am I going? If I'm going to be passing through certain spots, I need to be dressed in certain ways. And sometimes you don't realize you pass through that place before you even leave home. So the point that I'm just trying to make is that there are those common mental disorders that we are having to go through every day. And on that note, maybe the one thing that I want to say about mental health is that, as we all know, mental health is not. We've taken it to maybe mean something like someone is either has a mental illness or not. But mental health is just like our physical health. As I see all of you, there's nothing I can say is wrong with any one of you. But if we start asking ourselves questions about our physical health, some of you might start telling me, you know what, I'm diabetic. Actually, my BP is high. I have a problem with this physical whatever. But we don't define you with that physical condition. So that's the same with mental health. I might have a mental illness that has a name, that has a label that you can say, okay, Mrs. Mapuke suffers from this. But there are mental health states that we find all ourselves in. So it's kind of a spectrum, right, where we are saying it's 0 to 10. So, for example, for someone to have perfect mental health, you are saying maybe they are at 10. But for us when you are at 8, you still have 2 points to work for. When you're at 6, you still have 4 points to work for. When you're at 1, you still have 9 points to work for. And maybe you're at the other extreme, 0, where we are saying you have this, whatever. So what I want us to understand is that let's not try and come up with to say if somebody is mentally unhealthy when we have a label to put on them. Like I was explaining, I've dealt with women who have gone through gender-based violence. Now when they come for help, maybe they are now at a stage where they are now depressed. But they didn't start out depressed. They started out anxious, like we are talking about right now. So this is how it affects our mental health, in that slowly but surely you are beginning to have these mental states that are not healthy for your normal day life. So, for example, where a man is just waking up, bathing, going out, this girl has to start and think, oh my goodness, I have to go out there. You know, Neso was talking about how she has to go to school. It's one of the important deliverables for the day. But she has to really think about that before she goes out for school, because of what she's been subjected to. Number one. Number two, there's also an element of where some of these mental states are being transferred, not necessarily by what you have suffered, but by what you have seen others suffering. So we are talking about these news issues where you hear this girl went through this and this and this. You don't have to go through it yourself to be traumatized by that. By just hearing it and knowing that I'm a candidate for that kind of treatment puts so much pressure on the girl child, puts so much pressure on women to say, okay, what will I do? We have girl children right now who are not even looking forward to marriage, because the kind of marriages that they saw was where their mothers were being physically abused, right? So when we talk of gender-based violence, we're not just talking about physical abuse. There's emotional abuse, right? It's also happening within that. There's verbal abuse. It's happening in that same context where we are saying, and when we talk of violence against women, the key thing there is power and control. The perpetrators are saying, I'm more powerful than you. I want to control you. I want you to act the way I want you to act. So you'll find that because there are power issues, they'll always continue happening because someone feels the need to exert that power over, for example, over women, because they believe that they are weaker or whatever. So now we have women who are now trying very hard to show that they are strong, unnecessarily so, because they realize it's a power issue. If I don't come out as strong as I'm supposed to come out, it's going to be a challenge. So my point basically, maybe to just summarize all this, is that when we say it affects women's mental health, we are not saying that, we are not necessarily, although it can also mean that, we are not necessarily saying that we are going to have a list of women who will say they have this mental condition because of what men did to them. It's very subtle. Things are happening every day. Brains are being altered. Trauma is being created. Stress is being created around women. Imagine a woman who comes out from a house and then she's touted it or tortured like that on her way to work. She will not perform well at work. And when she doesn't perform well at work, it will also cause other issues, right? So it's kind of progressive in nature. The things, they kind of, they one layer upon another layer. So by the time we then have a label on this woman, at times we rarely trace it back to gender-based violence.
All right, thank you for that, Ms. Makuke. You touched on the topic of how we're seeing it from social media. So to a certain degree here in the UK, in England, it's not as bad as it is in South Africa or Zimbabwe. So I wanted to ask you, Marua, how have you been affected seeing all these things on social media about violence against women?
Wow. Okay. I think to piggyback off of what Mrs. Mapuki was saying, I think for me it's been, and everyone really, I think the reason why it's weighed heaviest on my heart is because even if I am time zones away, I still see myself in those women. Or I still see my mom, I still see my sister, I still see my aunt. I see women around me who raised me, or I see myself in their experiences, in their story. And regardless of, even if it's not as bad as it is in Zim, I think for me personally, I still struggle and I still feel, I mean, for me, from a personal standpoint, I get very nervous around men that I don't know, and around, like, I'm sure most women, around big groups of men. If there's 2 or 3 men that are standing next to each other, I make a conscious effort to move myself as far away as possible from them. So even here, where it's not as overtly aggressive, I think I haven't really had much of an issue with catcalling, but I know that it still leaves a very bad taste in my mouth. So it's put me in a position where I've had to like take a step back from social media on multiple occasions. It's really, I've had days when I wake up and I cry. Like it really actually just, one day at a time, just picking and picking and picking at me until I was like, you know what, I'm tired. Like it just, every single day I get more and more exhausted. So yeah, I think for me personally, I think it's very exhausting to see what women have to go through. I think it's even more exhausting to then be all the way here and know that there are people who are close to me, who are at home, who are in South Africa, who have to go through something like this, who have to live with that kind of I don't want to use the word trauma per se, because they may not have experienced something, but they definitely are looking over their shoulder. So it's sort of like stress, exactly. So knowing that people who I care about are having to carry that on their shoulders, that makes me then, you know, it also makes me queasy. And that's something that I also then carry. Yeah, I guess it's the I'm every woman tagline applies here, because I just see all the women. I'm just like, my heart.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Marua. You touched on how you sometimes take social media breaks as a way to take care of yourself. And like I said, this is a heavy topic for all of us as women, you know. So I would like to open the discussion to everyone. What are some things that you do for yourself that help you get away from this topic, or when it's getting too heavy, how do you distance yourself from it? Anyone speak?
Okay. So I wouldn't say I distance myself, and I think I should. I think I should distance myself, but I find that when I'm well read on the topic that is bothering me, I feel sort of empowered. So I think for the past weeks, I've been reading about what is gender-based violence, what is causing it, why is it so prevalent during the lockdown, what is happening to women, children, in religious minorities and religious cultures, because also like honor killings can be a part of gender-based violence. What is contributing to that and so forth. So I find that to cope with all the information overload that social media can give you, it's sometimes for me very important that I take as not a step back, but I compartmentalize all the information I'm given and put it into constructive, factual components so that I can best assess the situation with a level head and hopefully with a more solution-oriented thing so that I don't wallow in, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And have something, forward thinking to think on. And I find that very comforting for too much social media things.
Thank you. Mati and Nesu, do you guys have anything to add to that?
I think I really distance myself. I feel like those weeks everything was, initially I didn't really want to say, felt I didn't know why these things were happening, and there were days when I was just talking to myself, but I don't understand why things are women. Why is it just? But then I feel like as much as I may not have a big platform, use my voice as best I can. These triggering things on because maybe it'll reach one. I've my platform or my voice. So that's what comforting is. That put in.
Right. Okay, thank you, Matthew. And Ms. Mapuke, I wanted to ask you, since you're well advised in this area, what tips or advice would you give us women when we're trying to not be triggered by everything that we're seeing? How do we take care of ourselves mentally?
Okay, so I think what is very important is for, first of all, to not deny the reality that it is there.
Mm.
So we need to accept that this is a situation that we have and it's real and it's there out there. So as much as you try to distance yourself and to make sure you're getting good doses that you can cope with, let's not also get into denial and think that it will never happen to us or never, because then what it will mean is that when you get to it, you are sort of ill prepared for it because you have told your mind that it will not happen to you. So I think number one, to prepare ourselves mentally, let's acknowledge that it is there, and in a sense to do what Nyasha was saying, to say, okay, what are the facts around it? Because sometimes we tend to feed on what is offered to us and not what we are seeking. So when we do that, it depends on who is offering you the information. You might end up having so much information that is actually making you so much afraid that you are paralyzed. You can't do anything. Now you can't work. You can't do anything. But let's have the facts right, number one. Number two, talking with trusted others about the issue. So just acknowledging that it's now affecting you. You have read it on social media, you have read it whatever, or your aunt who has gone through it, but you have that trusted other you can speak to say, you know what, it's beginning to affect me. Now I'm afraid to go out. Because when we verbalize those thoughts, when we verbalize what we are going through, there's a mental process that happens. It's either you're going to deal with them or you're going to dwell with them. But I'm hoping that when you verbalize them, it will be a way of dealing with exactly what you are feeling and what you are going through. And then again, we really need to start taking steps. What is it that I can do to help myself so that I do not end up in this situation? So, for example, as we talk about them, I'm not condoning those who do it, but when you realize that if that's the reality, that when you go to a certain place dressed in a certain way, 99% chances are this is going to happen to you. You might want to really take a step back and say, okay, fine. Unless you have taken a position where you are saying, I want to stand for this, so I'm going out there as a statement. Sometimes it is safer and better for your mental health to just dress. I know it hurts because on the other hand, you are feeling, why do they have to get away with it? But that's the reality of the situation. Sometimes for you to take care of yourself, you might need to take those steps. And there's nothing wrong to say, you know what, I want to take a stand against this. If that's how you feel, and you feel you have the strength and the power to then stand for it. But what we're just saying is count the cost, know exactly what it takes for you to be in a certain place, dressed in a certain way, doing certain things. Because the other thing that we need to understand mentally is that when you can't, you not when you can't, almost always, it's not always, you have no power of changing the next person. So right now, as women, there are so many things that we would want men to change. But guess what? We don't have the power to change men. They will change when they are ready, when they want to. We can put pressure, we can say out like these discussions that we are having, we can let them know. But the power that you have is the power for yourself and what you can do. But what the other person can do, you can only hope, you can only wish, you can only persuade, but you can only go so far. So with that understanding, that's why I say sometimes it's very important for you, for your mental health, to know boundaries. How far can you go? How much can you take? And make sure you're keeping within those boundaries for the sake of your mental health. And again, the other thing that you can also do is just to make sure that, for example, if you don't have that trusted other, you can even use, for example, journaling techniques. You have a journal where you can just write. The idea is to process your thoughts, because you are saying mental health. This is something that is happening mentally. And mental health has so much to do with how we interpret events and how we interpret things as they are happening to us. So you will find that because you have processed your thoughts very well, when a man verbally abuses you, you know exactly either how to respond, or even if you don't respond, you can decide there and there to say, you know what, I will not let this affect me. Why? Because you have trained your mental, your mind in such a way. So I think that those are some of the ways that we can also sort of take care of our own mental health in this gender based, and also to just appreciate that in almost all the cases it has nothing to do with you, because in most cases what we end up doing is we internalize what happens out there. So you go out there, these men start cage calling you, they do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you start to internalize it and say, maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm true, there's something that is wrong with me. I need to change something about me. I need to do this about me, you know. So that extreme internalization where we are saying you are now taking the blame of everything that is happening to you as if it's your fault, right? And then your self-esteem suffers. And when your self-esteem suffers, you can now sort of you cannot gracefully do what you are supposed to do, because already you now have a bad image about yourself. So I think above all, let's be able to carry ourselves with pride, knowing that we are created in this way for a purpose, and whatever that may seem weaker in our gender is actually made that way for a purpose. And to grab that and be ourselves and be strong out there.
Thank you, Ms. Mapuke. So, as you mentioned that men are not likely to change until they want to. So the most we can do is be there for each other as women, right? So my question for Marua first is, how do you want other women to be there for you? I know we already do things like when we go out, we go to the bathrooms together, you know, you don't walk alone at night, you walk in groups and all that. But is there anything in particular that you want so that you're able to go to your girlfriends and say, this is like, like Ms. Mapuke mentioned, that you needed like a friend you can talk to, someone you can confide in. Yeah.
I think for me, it comes in two elements. I think the first one is, and what has been happening recently, and I would like to see more of it, is friends, my peers, people who I know, we start to open up and actually have like really honest conversations about our experiences with sexual assault, with emotional abuse, with gender-based violence, be it personal experiences or what we've seen growing up. And that's been very interesting because, there are people who you grew up with or people who you see every day. And, you don't know that there's something that they've experienced. And then you have a connection in that light. So, there's a friend of mine who I had a conversation, and it was kind of insane to me because I was like, oh, I've known you like all this time. And, I didn't know that you went through something like that. And then having a conversation, I think we related to each other in a different way, which allowed us to be able to support each other better. Because I think we opened up intimacy in a different way. So I think that is something that I would like to see more of, because I think we have conversations on the internet all the time. But I would like to hear more about the people around me experience directly one-to-one than on a Twitter thread. I think it humanizes my friends and the women around me, my community, more and better than Twitter threads and Instagram stories do. So in one facet, that's what I would like to see. On the other side, I think I would definitely like to have more conversations than with the older women. So I would like to see a lot more forums that allow me to be able to have conversations, and not just me, people like me. When I'm using myself as an example, I'm using, us, our age group, our demographic, our sort of like, us, having conversations with the women who are 2-3 generations older than us, and having conversations with them about what are those red flags, what are you looking into, what are your experiences, like, let's have those conversations, because I think that also allows for healing for them. But I think it also creates spaces for us to be able to actually know what to look out for. I think it also allows us to be able to just operate better in our family units, because I think I've also had experiences where, some of my family members would be like, oh, that's why men are giving you that attention because you dress this way. And it's like, well, let's have a conversation. I'd rather, like Mrs. Mapuku said, tell me, like, okay, when you dress this way, unfortunately it sucks, but do you know what I mean? Like, I think having that dialogue then, I don't know how, but I would love to see
necessary conversations.
Exactly. I would love to see more intentional conversation happening between generations.
Okay. I'm just looking at our time. So there's another topic that I wanted us to touch on, is that I'm pretty sure all of us here have been harassed or assaulted in some way or form by men. And I once read the statement that said, every girl knows another girl who has been assaulted by a man. So my question is, as much as we can't change men until they want to, what advice or what would you like to say to them so that they can see that this is actually a real thing for us? It's not a touch and go, For them, they see it and they move on, but with us, it's a daily thing. How would you guys hit the nail on the head to them? I'll start with Nyasha.
Well, I would say to the men that I think it's very important that they have these hard discussions amongst themselves, like what Maria was saying about how we need to have conversations. It's very important that amongst them, please have these conversations, that your sister, your mother, that person that you're seeing maybe on social media is experiencing that. And to empathize And this seems to be a very hard thing to ask of the world these days, empathy and so forth. But to empathize and to see that each experience is valid, whether it doesn't happen in your sphere of existence, but that every experience uttered is valid, and can transparency, empathy be invoked when someone is relaying an experience, and not to denounce it and say, oh, but you're falling for it, or whatever excuse that can be made. But to treat every experience as valid, for me, is the number one thing I would say to men.
Thank you for that, Nyasha. And Nyesu?
So I would say, with the quote that you mentioned, I've heard a similar one, but it went on to say, every woman knows someone that's been assaulted, but no men seem to know assaulters. And what I have to say to men is, it's you, you know? And not to be harsh or frank, but we have to be honest, is a lot of people think sexual assault, think violence against women has to be this violent, extreme act. You have to be able to physically see it. You have to be able to, you have to be this horrible person. Everyone thinks of abuse as this monster. It has a monster's face, but it doesn't have a face because it's you, you know? It's not just the end of the spectrum, physical things. It's everything that leads up to that point. And even the physical things that end up happening, but it's done with a smile. It's you. Just because you have a lot of friends that are women, just because your female friends allow you to be friendly in a certain manner, doesn't mean all women will let you be that, and doesn't mean it's okay. You do not have rights to women's bodies. And the fact that men don't realize that, and it's a second thought, is scary, which means the people that are assaulting these women are you. If it's not you, it's your brother. If it's not your brother, it's your cousin. If it's not your cousin, it's your father or your friend. Everybody knows a harasser, an assaulter, something, because the statistics are that way. So many women are abused, so many women are attacked, so many women have all these things happen to them. These are not ghosts. These are the men you have around you, and if you don't have any of them around you, it's likely you. And you need to take responsibility for that, and you need to look inwards, because just because women stick around you, or just because you have female friends, or just because you think you're a good person, doesn't mean you are.
Right. Thank you for that, Anyasu. Marty, would you like to add on to what Nyasha and Nyesu have said?
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, what I would say to me, ask yourselves why are the women's experience, your mother or your sisters, why do you as a person feel it's Marty or X and O experience, or say, this is what you begin to question it. You begin to ask yourself, is it true? Where's the evidence? But to someone you have built some sort of a relation with, why do you believe it? Why does it hurt you so much that someone so close to you has, been assaulted in some form of a way? Why? What does that really say about you and the way that you think? And I feel like sometimes men just really need to reevaluate maybe the way that they've been brought up to think, or the things that they see, and then ask themselves, what can I do? And I think that's just something that they should do, just question themselves and say, what kind of a person am I, and what am I using my voice to do?
Right. Thank you so much for that, Marty. And I definitely agree with all points that have been made. Finally, Marua, before I head on to Miss Mapuke.
Honestly, retweets. What everyone here has said, I have nothing of real substance to add onto that. They've covered all bases.
Okay, thank you. And Miss Mapuke?
Okay. My message to men is that stop seeing women as sexual objects and see them as equals, compatriots, colleagues. Yeah. So I think there's this mindset that whenever a man is around women, they feel they need to, impress, they feel they need to show a certain level of power, they feel like they need to exert a certain level of power because there are women around them. Sometimes it's actually done from a mindset where they are saying, I want to impress. But everything, I don't care how noble your motivation is, like what the other ladies have said, can you stop and think what it's doing to the person you are doing it to? Can you stop and think, if someone says they don't feel okay about what you are doing, you don't have the right to correct that feeling and say you should be feeling this way. You don't have the right to say to someone, you shouldn't be feeling this way, like what the other speaker say that if other people are okay with it, but if I'm telling you I'm not okay with it, can you please stop and listen to that and understand that this woman is not okay with it? And also this notion that you are the prefect of the world, you have to correct everything about women that's wrong. Please just stop. It's not working. It's not fair, So you find that some men feel that they have to correct women. And I also understand that sometimes it's coming from the way we are bringing up our boys to say, look after your sister, be the man, It's this mentality that the mindset that they have to be protective, to be all this. And sometimes it's from that place where they feel that they need to correct us. I'm talking especially in the context of marriage, where you hear a man saying, I beat her up because she was not behaving. Oh my goodness, she was not behaving well. This prefect mentality that men may actually have over women, it should just stop. And to just say, how would you want to be treated? Even as a man, how would you want to be treated? Can you just treat me similarly? And just respect my feelings, respect my space, respect everything about me. Respect should be mutual. And even if you really want to be respected that way, please understand that respect is earned. You don't enforce it, it's earned. So do enough to earn that respect. That would be my message to men. And that as much as we understand that you will change until you want to change, the message I have for you is we will do everything in our power to protect ourselves mentally, physically, because we are not going to take this, just like let it come because that's how it is. We'll do what we need to do to make sure that we are safe and we are also protected in ways that we need to be protected, especially mentally. So if we can be in this together, we can make the world better together and we can make it bearable together. I'm sure as women, we have brothers. As men, they have sisters. If you just think of your sister, do you want them to be treated that way? That would be a good thing. But sadly, sometimes there are others who actually treat their sisters that way. So to just give them that, say, treat others as you treat your sister, I will all be beaten because they beat their sisters anyway. So what we're just saying is, can we respect women? Can we respect women and how they feel and what they go through?
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for that. That was so insightful. So now, just to wrap it up, I'd like to thank all of you, phenomenal women, for actually coming to speak about this. It takes a lot, but it's a step in the right direction. We're doing what needs to be done. Like Ms. Mafuge said, we're going to do everything in our power, and this is it, so I'm glad that you guys use this as a platform to speak, to share your thoughts. And so thank you everyone who's going to be watching this. This is Create Sim, and yes, take care of yourselves, ladies. And have a good day.